So, how do we act? So this is kind of what. Let's get into how. Does anybody do a time check?
That's over there.
2:28.
Perfect. All right. So I've mentioned a few times close reading. Close reading, like I said, reading and text in quotes because, like I said, reading is just the process of encountering and actively engaging a text. And a text is any human product. You can do close reading of the back of the cereal box. You can do close reading of an episode of an anime. You can do close reading of a book. You can do close reading of 2 sentences. Anything. And it could be the entire text or it could be a fragment of the text. Since we do not have time to watch and analyze an entire episode of an anime, we're going to be doing a fragment today. And in some ways that's actually easier because close reading is work. I find it to be fun work, but it takes effort and it can be hard to sustain that for, an entire 13 episode series, let alone a 200 episode series. So what exactly is it? Close reading is all about mindfulness. It's about paying close attention to the text, looking for details and patterns, noting anything that stands out to you. It's about the text and nothing but the text. It is not about what you think of the text. It's not about how the text makes you feel. It's not about you at all. It's not about me. It's not about the creator of the text. It is purely a matter of objectively saying, okay, this is what is going on in this text. It's about getting as clear a view of the text as possible, both as a unified whole and as something assembled of lots of little parts. And it's where you have to start. Close reading is not analysis. Close reading is step 1 of doing analysis. But if you don't do the close reading, then you're just doing that passive, accepting the text, accepting your reactions to the text. This is necessary so that you can approach the text. This takes work at first. This was hard to do when we were first learning about it in college, but that was a decade ago, and I find now I do it basically automatically. Even when I'm watching stuff for fun, I'm doing this. I'm noticing things. And that gives me evil plot powers. I can usually tell people how a movie will end 5 minutes in. If it's a reasonably complex movie, half an hour in. Yes. I managed to scare the crap out of my sister during the third Pokemon movie, when there's a particular scene where Ash is falling off a cliff, and they had showed Charizard for about 30 seconds at the beginning of the movie. And he hadn't shown up since, this was like 45 minutes later. Ash is falling off this cliff, I go like this. Charizard follows my hand across the scene. That was my first time seeing it. So, what we're going to do, let me pause this again for a second. What we're going to do is I'm going to show a text, in this case a fragment of an anime. I want you to watch it and just call out what you see. Anything that stands out to you, anything interesting, I'll join in as well. If you will probably recognize this as part of a larger anime. If you have seen that larger anime, pretend you haven't. Pretend that this is all that exists and you are trying to figure out what is going on with it. And pay attention to like I said, any part of it that stands out. Music, visuals, subtitles, anything. Okay, anybody? It's going to be dark.
Yeah.
It's really flickery. The characters are just silhouettes.
Sort of cloudy nighttime background.
Good. A lot of blues and purples, cold colors.
Might could be the blue. Ending credits?
These are ending credits.
The music mentions the colors that they lower back the table.
Just reach for her. Just reach for her.
This is shifting from cold section to brighter section.
Yeah. And now she's running. Yeah, her color is changing, actually. I never noticed that before. She's the silhouette change.
Our representation where there were no before.
Change of angle.
Shift full black. Light
Bringing
sky.
the distance further away. Breathing out.
And now fetal position inside an eye. It is the left eye.
Facial silhouette.
All right. Awesome. That works. I've never given this panel before. That worked so well. I'm so glad that worked. Thank you, guys. So the next step of analysis is what I call pattern forming. This has a lot of different names from a lot of different people, and I often see it doesn't get a lot of attention, which makes me sad. This is what TV Tropes does. This TV Tropes is pattern forming the site. And again, pattern forming is not analysis, but it is an important part of analysis. So what is pattern forming? Pattern forming is two things. You're looking for patterns in the work, things that repeat. Let me give you some examples. So before I get into that, humans are pattern-making machines. We are incredibly sophisticated and powerful pattern-making machines. We can take two dots in a curved line and see a face. We create these patterns everywhere we go. We create them in our minds. So patterns within a work. We've got repeated motifs, parallels, contrasts, implied comparisons. I'm going to go back to NGE for examples. NGE, don't know if you've ever noticed this, it has a repeated motif of bad things happening to people's left arms. Ava's get their left arms messed up a lot. Shinji is constantly staring at his left arm. It's Rei's left arm that falls off in the movie. Left arms keep having stuff happening to them, and that is a pattern. What that pattern means is a little hard to say. I have theories, who knows? But there is a lot of stuff happening to people's left arms. That's an example of a repeated motif. A repeated motif can be almost anything. It can be a visual element. A lot of anime use the same design, different colors but the same design for characters' eyes. It could be roses in Utena, that's a repeated motif. It could be a musical sting. Almost anything. Parallels. Parallels are when the work puts two things in there that have a lot of similarities and puts them side by side so you can see that. Sticking with NGE, Shinji has a troubled relationship with his father, Misato has a troubled relationship with her father. A lot of characters have troubled relationships with their fathers. The difference between a parallel and a repeated motif is that a repeated motif is one tiny thing. A parallel is something that keeps continuing on. It's something that they go into depth with. And so there's a lot of repeated motifs that create that parallel. A contrast is any time two things are really different and it puts them next to each other in some sense. Sticking with NGE, look at Shinji, look at Asuka. Asuka, very brash, covering up underlying insecurity. Shinji is the exact opposite. He's a complete doormat covering up a berserk badass. Their colors are completely contrasted. Asuka is all hot colors, bright colors. Shinji is more cool colors, neutral colors. Finally, implied comparisons are where parallels and contrasts can both be kinds of implied comparisons. Implied comparisons are where it puts two things forward and says, compare these. It puts two things in a situation where you automatically want to weigh one against the other. For example, Rei and Asuka are both presented as possible love interests for Shinji, and they're both pilots, which immediately leads to fans wanting to compare, viewers want to compare the two of them, which then calls attention to parallels between them, contrasts between them, and so forth. There's also a work can be part of a larger pattern. there are a lot of common structures in fiction. A lot of stories, for example, are about a character coming of age and confronting adulthood. A lot of stories are about a character for whom everything seems to be going well, but they have some underlying flaw that causes everything to come crashing down around them. A lot of stories are about a character setting out on a great journey and totally reshaping the world around them. A lot of stories have people slipping on banana peels. Basically, common structures are repeated motifs and parallels that instead of appearing within a work, appear in multiple works. When you get enough common structures shared by the same group of works, you get a genre. And you also can have references, allusions, and parodies. Those are also patterns that include a work. How many times have they remade How the Grinch Stole Christmas? In different, that's one of those things that every show does either that or It's a Wonderful Life or one of those, or A Christmas Carol. They all, basically 90% of the Christmas specials for every show ever in the West are one of those three stories being done over again. They'll have references to other shows. They'll have allusions, which are like references, but higher class. And they'll do full-on parodies. Let me give you an example with the first anime I ever saw, Slayers. Slayers has an anti-hero main character who is a hot-blooded shonen archetype that just happens to be a girl. It's got a Nietzschean fantasy setting, meaning there's, this vast cosmic war between good and evil, and our characters are caught in the middle. And it's just generally your typical shonen fantasy adventure, which is its genre. It's got, like I said, the hot-blooded hero, the ditzy blonde that tags along with the hot-blooded hero, the rival that becomes an ally. It's got, extended battle sequences across multiple episodes. It's got, fiendish villains. All typical shonen stuff, and like most shonen stuff, it's about a character maturing. It includes references. There's an episode where a character shows up wearing a lieutenant's costume and offers the sword fighter in the group a rose. It's got an episode that's very Alice in Wonderland-ish, and it puts the main character in Alice's dress from the Disney movie. And it explicitly parodies Sentai Teens. It has a Shane parody. It has a parody of an old Merry Melody short that I appear to be the only person who's ever seen, so I'm not sure it really existed. All kinds of that kind of thing.